The episode begins with Lucy arriving at the bank in a surprisingly composed and determined mood, clearly still carrying the after effects of her previous misadventures. And she makes a visible effort to present herself as more disciplined and reliable, greeting Mr. Mooney with unusual politeness and immediately focusing on her tasks without distraction. A behavior that both surprises and unsettles him because it feels unnatural coming from her, and Viv, observing this shift, quietly jokes that Lucy acting normal is somehow more suspicious than her usual chaos. And this sets the tone for the episode as Lucy attempts to redefine herself while the people around her remain skeptical that such a transformation can last. And the situation takes shape when the bank becomes involved in preparing for an important visit or event that requires everything to run smoothly and professionally, creating an environment where mistakes must be minimized and appearances carefully managed. And Mr. Mooney, aware of Lucy's history, initially tries to keep her assigned to the simplest possible duties. But Lucy insists that she is capable of handling more responsibility now that she has learned her lesson, and after some hesitation, he agrees to give her a slightly more involved role, though still under strict supervision. And Lucy embraces this opportunity with a level of focus that seems promising at first, carefully following instructions, organizing materials, and even resisting the urge to comment on things that would normally spark her curiosity. But this restraint begins to build internal pressure because Lucy's personality is not suited to prolonged suppression, and small details start to catch her attention despite her efforts to ignore them, such as minor inconsistencies in scheduling, unusual behavior from certain individuals, or vague remarks that seem insignificant to others but stand out to her as potentially meaningful. And as these observations accumulate, Lucy finds herself slipping back into her old pattern of constructing a larger narrative out of fragmented information, convincing herself that there is something important being overlooked and that she might be the only one perceptive enough to notice it. And this internal shift marks the beginning of her gradual return to impulsive action, though this time it is more subtle and initially disguised as careful attention to detail, as she begins to double-check things that do not necessarily require it, quietly adjusting arrangements, asking indirect questions, and inserting herself into conversations under the pretense of being helpful. And while these actions do not immediately cause disruption, they begin to alter the flow of preparations in small but cumulative ways, creating a ripple effect that others start to notice without immediately understanding the source. And Viv becomes the first to recognize that Lucy is once again heading down a familiar path, attempting to intervene gently by reminding her that not every irregularity is a problem that needs solving. But Lucy, now convinced that she is operating with greater control and awareness than before, reassures her that everything she is doing is reasonable and necessary. And this confidence continues to grow until Lucy reaches a point where she feels justified in making more direct changes, believing that she is preventing potential issues before they arise. And this escalation leads to a critical moment when one of her adjustments interferes with a key element of the event, causing confusion and forcing others to scramble in order to adapt. And the tension rises as Mr. Mooney becomes aware that something is going wrong, his suspicion quickly turning toward Lucy as he attempts to trace the source of the disruption. And when he confronts her, Lucy initially defends her actions with a mixture of logic and intuition, explaining her reasoning in a way that almost makes sense but ultimately reveals that she has once again allowed her imagination to override clear instructions. And the situation reaches its peak during the event itself, where multiple small changes converge into a larger complication that threatens to undermine the carefully planned proceedings, leading to a sequence of fast-paced interactions in which Lucy tries to correct the consequences of her decisions while maintaining the appearance that everything is under control. And this creates a blend of physical and situational comedy as she moves rapidly between different tasks, offering explanations, redirecting attention, and improvising solutions, all while Mr. Mooney attempts to regain order and prevent further damage, and Viv provides support where she can. Though even she struggles to keep up with the unfolding chaos, and despite the mounting difficulties, the resolution begins to take shape when Lucy experiences a moment of clarity, recognizing that her efforts to anticipate and control every outcome have once again created the very problems she was trying to avoid. And this realization prompts her to step back, something she rarely does voluntarily, and allow others to take the lead, contributing only where she is explicitly needed rather than inserting herself into every aspect of the situation. And this shift, though it comes late, helps stabilize the remaining issues, as the structure originally put in place is allowed to function without further interference, and through a combination of quick thinking, cooperation, and a bit of luck, the event concludes without lasting consequences, though not without leaving a strong impression on everyone involved. And in the aftermath, Mr. Mooney delivers another pointed but slightly softened lecture, acknowledging that while Lucy's intentions are not malicious and her instincts are not entirely without value, her inability to distinguish between when to act and when to observe remains her greatest challenge, and Lucy, for her part, listens more carefully than usual, showing signs that she is beginning to internalize these lessons even if she cannot yet consistently apply them. And Viv reinforces this perspective with a more supportive tone, suggesting that growth is not about eliminating Lucy's natural tendencies, but about learning how to channel them more effectively. And the episode closes on a note that blends reflection with humor as Lucy returns to her routine with a slightly more balanced approach, appearing calmer and more thoughtful while still retaining the spark that defines her character. And just as it seems she might maintain this equilibrium, the final moment delivers the inevitable twist, as Lucy notices something small and peculiar that immediately captures her attention, her expression shifting from calm composure to intrigued curiosity in an instant, hinting that the cycle is far from over and that her journey toward balance will continue to unfold in the same unpredictable, entertaining way that has defined her all along. And as the episode stretches beyond that apparent resolution, the subtle consequences of Lucy's behavior continue to ripple through the environment, creating a quieter but still meaningful continuation of the story. Because even though the major crisis has been resolved and the event has concluded without any lasting damage, there is a lingering sense among everyone at the bank that Lucy has once again come dangerously close to turning a manageable situation into complete disorder, and this awareness shapes the tone of the final segment, where interactions become more reflective and slightly restrained, particularly for Lucy, who now finds herself in an unusual position of self-awareness, replaying the events in her mind and recognizing the pattern that keeps repeating itself despite her efforts to change. And instead of immediately bouncing back into her usual carefree attitude, she hesitates, moving more slowly through her responsibilities and showing signs that she is genuinely trying to understand where things went wrong rather than simply brushing it off as another harmless misadventure. And Viv notices this shift right away, approaching Lucy with a mix of curiosity and concern, gently encouraging her to talk about what she is thinking, and Lucy, in a rare moment of honesty, admits that she is beginning to realize how often her desire to be helpful leads her to interfere in ways that create more problems than solutions. A realization that feels both uncomfortable and important because it challenges the very way she sees herself. And yet, even as she articulates this understanding, there is a sense that she is still trying to reconcile it with her natural instincts, which do not disappear simply because she has recognized their consequences. And Mr. Mooney, observing from a distance, remains cautiously optimistic but unwilling to fully trust that this moment of reflection will translate into lasting change, as he has seen similar patterns before, and his skepticism is not without reason, because Lucy's personality is defined by a kind of restless energy that resists long-term restraint, And this tension between awareness and impulse becomes the central thread of the episode's closing stretch, as Lucy is presented with one final, relatively minor situation that tests her ability to apply what she has learned, involving a small irregularity that would normally trigger her curiosity and prompt immediate action. And the scene slows down deliberately as Lucy notices the issue, her expression shifting in a way that signals the familiar spark of interest. But instead of reacting instantly, she pauses, visibly weighing her options, considering whether this is truly something that requires her involvement or simply another moment where she might be projecting significance onto something ordinary. And this pause becomes one of the most important moments in the episode, because it represents a genuine attempt to break the cycle, however small, and after a brief internal struggle, Lucy makes a conscious decision to handle the situation in a more measured way, choosing to verify the facts before taking action and involving others rather than assuming control. And although this approach feels slower and less dramatic, it ultimately proves effective, resolving the issue without unnecessary complication and reinforcing the idea that not every problem needs to be turned into a spectacle. And the reactions from those around her reflect this shift, as Viv offers a warm, approving smile and Mr. Mooney acknowledges the outcome with a restrained but noticeable sense of relief. And for Lucy, the significance of this moment is not in the scale of the success but in the process itself, as she begins to understand that her growth lies not in abandoning her instincts but in learning how to manage them. And this realization brings a sense of quiet satisfaction that contrasts with her usual exuberant reactions, creating a more grounded emotional tone as the episode moves toward its conclusion. And yet, true to form, the final beat refuses to let this growth settle into permanence, as Lucy, now feeling more confident in her ability to handle things appropriately, becomes just slightly more open to curiosity again. And when she overhears a passing remark or notices a small detail that seems just a little out of place, her imagination begins to stir once more. Not as wildly as before, but enough to suggest that the balance she is trying to achieve will always be a work in progress. And the camera lingers on her thoughtful yet intrigued expression, capturing that perfect blend of restraint and curiosity that defines her character at this stage, leaving the audience with the understanding that Lucy's journey is not about reaching a final state of perfection, but about navigating the ongoing tension between who she is and who she is trying to become, a tension that continues to fuel both the humor and the heart of the story as it moves forward.